Islam's presence in France is not just a story of faith, it is a story of war, conquest, migration, and resilience. It is a story that spans over 1,000 years, shaping France's history and identity in ways that many people may not realize. Today, Islam is the second largest religion in France. But how did it get here? To understand that, we need to go back to the very beginning. The introduction of Islam to what is now France dates back to the early 8th century, during the era of the Umayyad expansion. As Muslim forces moved through Spain, they pushed into southern France, establishing control over regions like Septimania. Narbonne, one of the most important cities in the region at the time, became a stronghold for Muslim rulers. From 719 to 759 AD, it served as a key base of operations. However, the advance of Muslim forces was halted in 732 AD at the Battle of Tours, where Charles Martel led the Frankish army to victory. This battle is often cited as a turning point that prevented further Muslim expansion into Western Europe. While the military advance was stopped, Muslim influence in France did not disappear. One of the most symbolic moments in the history of Islam in France came in 1926 with the opening of the Grand Mosque of Paris. Built as a tribute to the Muslim soldiers who fought for France in World War I, the mosque was not just a place of worship, it was a statement. It signified the recognition of Islam as part of France's national identity and honored the contributions of Muslims to the country's history. In France, Islam is the second largest religion, but determining the exact number of Muslims in the country is not as straightforward as it may seem. According to a 2019-2020 report by the National Institute of Statistics and Economic Studies, INSEE, Muslims make up approximately 10% of France's adult population, aged between 18 and 59. This means that within this age group, 1 in 10 people in France identifies as Muslim. Meanwhile, a 2017 study by the Pew Research Center estimated that Muslims accounted for 8.8% of France's total population, which translates to roughly 5.7 million individuals at the time. Given that France has continued to experience migration and demographic shifts since then, the number of Muslims today may be even higher. When looking at the denominational composition of Islam in France, the vast majority of Muslims follow Sunni Islam. This is consistent with global trends, as Sunni Muslims make up the largest branch of Islam worldwide. In France, the majority of Sunni Muslims have roots in North Africa, specifically Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, due to historical ties from the colonial period and post-World War II labor migration. Other Sunni communities include people of West African, Middle Eastern, and South Asian descent. On the other hand, Shia Muslims make up a much smaller percentage of the Muslim population in France, with estimates suggesting that they constitute less than 1% of the total Muslim community. The Shia Muslim population in France primarily consists of individuals with backgrounds from Lebanon, Iran, and some parts of West Africa. While they are a minority within the larger Muslim population, Shia Muslims in France have established religious and cultural centers to practice their faith and maintain their traditions. It is important to note that these figures are only approximations due to the lack of official government data on religious demographics. Since the French government does not conduct religious censuses, researchers rely on indirect data sources such as surveys, birth rates, and immigration statistics to estimate the size and composition of the Muslim population. This means that the true number of Muslims in France could be slightly higher or lower than these estimates. Muslims in France, making up around 10% of the adult population aged 18 to 59, lead daily lives that seamlessly blend their religious practices with the rhythms of French society. The majority of Muslims in France reside in large urban areas. The Île-de-France region, which includes Paris and its surrounding areas, is home to around 38% of the Muslim population, making it the most significant center of Muslim life in the country. Here, you will find a wide range of halal businesses, cultural associations, and mosques, including the iconic Grand Mosque of Paris, which serves as a major religious and cultural landmark. The second largest Muslim population is in the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region, particularly in Marseille and Nice, where around 13% of Muslims in France reside. Marseille, in particular, is known for its strong North African influence and a long history of migration from Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. In Rhône-Alpes, which includes Lyon and Grenoble, about 10% of the Muslim population resides. Lyon is one of France's major economic centers, has a dynamic Muslim community with many businesses, schools, and religious institutions catering to the needs of the population. In Nord-Pas-de-Calais, particularly Lille, around 5% of Muslims live in this northern region, which has historically been a key destination for immigrant workers from North Africa. These cities have developed vibrant Muslim communities with mosques, Islamic schools, and halal businesses forming an important part of the local economy and culture, from bakeries selling traditional North African pastries to bookstores offering religious texts. These urban centers reflect the diverse backgrounds of France's Muslim population. While many Muslims in France have successfully integrated into society, working in education, business, healthcare, and public service, challenges persist. Reports indicate that discrimination and racism remain issues, particularly in employment and housing. Muslim job applicants sometimes face bias, and there have been cases where individuals have been rejected from housing due to their religious background. Women who wear the hijab also report facing social stigma and professional barriers in certain workplaces, as public debates about religious expression continue in France. Despite these obstacles, efforts are being made at both governmental and community levels to address these issues and promote inclusivity. Activists and organizations work to combat discrimination, and many Muslims continue to contribute positively to society, enriching the country's cultural and social landscape. Islamophobia in France is a complex and deeply rooted issue, one that has sparked debate, controversy, and concern both within the country and on the international stage. Over the years, incidents of Islamophobia have increased. A 2014 Pew Research Center survey found that 72% of the French population held favorable views of Muslims. But despite this, discrimination, prejudice, and violence against the Muslim community persist. In recent years, attacks on mosques, verbal and physical assaults, and workplace discrimination have all been documented. Many Muslims, especially women who wear the hijab, report facing significant barriers in employment and education, making integration into society more difficult. One of the most controversial Islamophobic ideologies that has gained traction in France is the Great Replacement theory, a conspiracy theory introduced by French writer Renaud Camus in 2011. This theory claims that the native French population is being systematically replaced by non-European immigrants, particularly Muslims. While widely discredited, this idea has been exploited by far-right groups to fuel anti-Muslim rhetoric and influence political discourse in France. The rise of far-right parties and politicians who use Islamophobic narratives has contributed to a growing climate of hostility toward the Muslim community. The French government's actions have also played a role in shaping the challenges faced by Muslims. In December 2020, the government dissolved the Collective Against Islamophobia in France, CCIF, an organization that worked to combat anti-Muslim discrimination. This move was heavily criticized by human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, which argued that shutting down an anti-discrimination organization threatened fundamental freedoms of expression and association. The closure of CCIF left many without a voice or legal support when facing discrimination. In addition to institutional actions, France has implemented legislative measures that disproportionately affect Muslims. The 2004 law banning conspicuous religious symbols in public schools and the 2010 ban on full-face veils in public spaces have been some of the most controversial policies. Supporters argue that these laws protect the values of secularism and ensure that public spaces remain neutral, but critics say that they specifically target Muslim women, restricting their freedoms and forcing them to choose between their faith and their place in society. The impact of Islamophobia in France is not just a matter of legal restrictions. It affects every aspect of daily life for many Muslims. Employment discrimination remains a significant issue, with studies showing that Muslim job applicants are less likely to be hired than their non-Muslim counterparts. In education, Muslim students face biases and stereotypes, while young women who wear headscarves often struggle to access higher education or professional training programs. The stigma surrounding Islam in public discourse has led to social exclusion, making it harder for Muslims to feel a sense of belonging in French society. Despite these challenges, there are ongoing efforts to combat Islamophobia. Various civil society organizations, NGOs, and advocacy groups work tirelessly to document incidents of discrimination, provide legal support to victims, and raise awareness about anti-Muslim hate. These organizations play a crucial role in challenging stereotypes and amplifying the voices of those affected. On an international level, organizations like the European Network Against Racism, ENR, have called for greater action from European leaders to address discriminatory policies in France. They emphasize the need for solidarity, protective measures for Muslim communities, and stronger laws against Islamophobia. However, France has been resistant to external criticism, insisting that its secularist policies are necessary for national unity. And that brings us to the reality of Islam in France, its deep history, its growth, its challenges, and the resilience of its people. The story is still unfolding, and the future will be shaped by those who continue to seek understanding and coexistence. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more in-depth stories like this one.